Hello, everyone. I wanted to just talk a little bit about last week's study question assignment. Very informal questions. I mean, these are really just review questions, questions to, just to, I want to say get you thinking, but you're already thinking about the thing. Just something to do to, to have a little writing assignment to some fairly, obvious questions about the material. There are no wrong answers to these questions. They're open ended, but I just want to give you some notion of why I asked the questions that I did and what I was thinking about. So, if your answers are different from the kind of things that I say, I really wouldn't worry about it. It's just an exercise in reviewing the material, responding to somebody else's questions about it, and something to do. You need something to do every week. So, number one, let's suppose that autonomous vehicles are safer than human driven ones. I don't know enough about the technical aspects of it. I certainly, these things are changing so quickly. I haven't read anything lately about any sort of breakthroughs. We seem to be in a kind of a lull when it comes to self driving cars. Obviously, with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of things have stopped. I mean, is there still such a thing as Uber? I guess. I don't know. I haven't taken Uber for a long time, and I don't expect to take an Uber in a long time. And I know that in self-driving cars is Uber was working on it. Of course, Tesla. I think Tesla's Tesla, so not to be ignored. But let's suppose let's just that self that autonomous vehicles are safer than human-driven ones, which either is true or could be true very soon. Does that mean we should welcome self-driving cars? Why or why not? Well, there is obviously no right or wrong answer to this. It's just your judgment. One of the reasons I asked the question the way I did is because it obviously brings up, a kind of a issue of what moral approach you take. And if you are a utilitarian, I would suppose that if indeed it's established, which it very well could be in the near future, and I mean could be, I don't know, that autonomous vehicles are on the whole safer, then I would suppose as a utilitarian, you would be all for them. I mean, that is, if autonomous vehicles are safer, that means there'll be fewer accidents. If there are fewer accidents, there will be a lessening of human suffering. If there's a lessening of human suffering, then utilitarianism tells you that's the right thing to do. So I would suppose that if you are a straightforward utilitarian, then your answer would be we should welcome self-driving cars. We should promote them. We should, as quickly as possible, convert all cars, all vehicles to being autonomous vehicles. Now, of course, as many people pointed out in their discussion posts about utilitarianism, it is very difficult to predict all of the outcomes. There may be some uncertainties in terms of, you know, its ultimate impact on human happiness, but that's almost always the case. And I suppose that, in a certain sense, whenever you make a decision based upon consequentialism, you're always making a guess because you can never fully anticipate all of the consequences of your actions, which is something that will become very, very thematic when we read the Jonas essay, Technology and Responsibility, in week 4. But that being said, I think that as a utilitarian, you have to go by the reasonable evidence. And as it is, we don't, I don't know what we would see as being, in a practical sense, the ultimate threat if clearly they're safer. But there may be other reasons besides utilitarianism to hesitate to welcome and employ or deploys self-driving vehicles or autonomous vehicles. Um, and one of them may be just the kind of thing that comes up in the moral machine survey, or the whole idea of handing over safety considerations or safety judgments or judgments about in an accident situation about what lives should be chosen over others. That may be a fateful step that we don't want to make, and if in fact it may be the kind of fateful step that may in itself be immoral. That is, some of us may believe, especially if we're Kantians, that you simply can't program those kind of you can't program you can't make a program that decides who lives and who dies, because that would be a violation, no doubt, of the second version of the categorical imperative. Um, that's something that may hold us back, and the whole idea of handing over something like the decision-making process when it comes to life and death may indeed be such a fateful step that we may not want to do it. And that's something that maybe when we read the Jonas essay in week 4, looking back on it, that may be a reason not to do it. I don't know. That's the kind of things I was thinking about. I'm sure that in your answers, you may have come up with different things. I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. I'm doing this at the very end of the week. Number 2, do you agree with the democratic approach that the moral machine experiment takes to the question of programming autonomous vehicles? Why or why not? Again, open-ended question, but let me explain it a little more. I mean, the democratic approach is the idea that if we are going to develop a moral algorithm for how these vehicles are to operate in those rare situations where, you know, some lives have to be chosen over others, and I think that they will be rare. Um, the idea of the moral machine experiment is that the kind of programming, the kind of directions that should be given to these vehicles should be something that reflects public opinion. That's what I meant by democratic approach. That is that they say that this will have to be done, and it should be done in accord with what people actually want. And that sounds reasonable, I suppose. But that would be to presuppose that either the best moral decisions are the ones that we arrive at through consensus, or that even if they're not the best moral decisions, that we have to go by what people generally want. And I think that that's not obviously true at all. That is, I think it is quite clear in most of our minds that what is moral and what is most popular, what is the moral thing to do and what is the most popular thing to do, oftentimes are not the same thing. So on the one hand, I think it's completely reasonable to suppose that this hypothetical programming for autonomous vehicles should be in accord with people's general moral intuitions, at least what they say they are. On the other hand, I don't think it's clear at all. I don't think it's obvious at all that the best moral approach is necessarily the most popular one. I think that oftentimes the most popular ideas about what's right and wrong to do are absolutely appalling. And I think that we don't have to reach too far back or too far afield in politics and history to come up with examples of that. So I think it's actually a good question whether taking a democratic approach, a populist approach, almost like a consumer approach, really, to to the morality or the ethics that will be programmed into autonomous vehicles. I don't think it's obvious at all that that's the best way to go. When you took the moral machine survey, were you surprised by any of the results? Well, we'll take a look at that when I have a chance to go through. I don't know. I mean, I suppose when I took it, if I remember, it's been a while since I took it. I'll take it again. Uh, I wasn't. I wasn't surprised by my results, except I was surprised by how my results differed from the most popular results, at least in certain respects. In some respects, I was took quite a common way of dealing with things. In other respects, I didn't. I guess I wasn't surprised by my results. I was surprised by what the results were, and I was surprised that. Well, one of the things that I saw that didn't surprise me, unfortunately, because I've taught so many moral philosophy classes, is how many people actually would save animals before people. I was not very surprised by that, but one of the things that I do when I teach Kant, oftentimes, in terms of the second categorical imperative, is I ask people. I set up a scenario where you can either save a very unpleasant human being or your pet dog, and you don't have any. You can't save both. You'd be surprised how many people save the dog and let the human being die. I mean, in the hypothetical. So I was surprised by that. If I'm not mistaken, in my memory, again, I have to take a look at the Moral Machine Survey. It's been several months since I took it. And I think also as I get older, and I'm sure this is very common. I mean, I'm 54 years old now, and it's interesting getting old in many respects. But one of the things you get more sensitive to is the way that people tend to value the lives of younger people over older people. I see that there's a utilitarian basis for that, and but maybe as I get older, it seems less obvious that that's the right approach. So I'm not comfortable in choosing between saying that the life of a 25-year-old is more valuable than the life of a 75-year-old. I see the utilitarian argument in terms of saving the amount of more life left. There's more life left probably to the 25-year-old. But when it comes to deciding who gets smushed by a truck, I'm not sure that the utilitarian approach is really the best one. But again, that may be because I'm getting older. So those are just some of the things I had in mind. I'll take a look at what you guys wrote, and if I have anything interesting to say in response to it, I certainly will. Again, there were no right and wrong answers. All I'm doing is I'm looking for thoughtful answers, which is all any philosophy teacher can ask for.